Well, this seemed like the right kind of music to put on to honor Mike Boyle's 1906 Model 27 that has been here in the workshop for about 7 months. As I've gone between it and other machines and taken it through a lot of different phases that we're going to look at on Facebook, from a real rough, rusty state where it really wasn't anything pretty to look at, to a point now where I think you're going to look at it and go, holy mackerel, that thing should be in a museum. And Mr. Bean obviously always wants to be the center of attention with his dancing, and this is perfect music to dance by. And Dr. Singer and he kind of got this all set up, so I wanted to thank you guys for getting everything set up for Mike's premiere for his Model 27. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of a history on the Model 27, which actually came on the scene in the real early versions of it, of the VS1, the VS2, and the VS3 right around 1890. And they continued to make these machines that were really the first vibrating shuttle technology machines that Singer ever used until right around 1913. So Mike's machine being a 1906, it was just about 7 years away from the ending of the production cycle of that, which I think really makes it even that much more special. And I had to be quiet for the ending of that beautiful ragtime piece because you probably caught right away that that was a happy birthday song. Why in heaven's name are they playing a happy birthday song? Well, it's because today is Friday, and this machine, about 114 years ago, was born on September 18th, 1906. And this being Friday, September 18th, Mike and I talked about it, and we thought, wouldn't it be cool to set this up so that this premiere was released on the birth date of this very special machine? And to make this event even more special, I asked Mike if he would be willing to pop over to the workshop and be a part of this. And so I'm gonna kind of widen this shot a little bit, take it away from Mr. Bean. He always likes to be on camera, Mr. Bean and Dr. Singer, but they're gonna have to get off of camera for just a second. And I'm going to pan over to my friend Mike Boyle. And Mike, if you would do me the honor, first of all, just ringing the bell next to you to signify the class has started. And then I know you don't know a lot about this machine, but can you share just a little bit about how you acquired this machine?
Well, my third wife and I, she decided she wanted a treadle machine, and she was looking. And she found one over by Kiwani, and we went out there and took a look at it, and it looked like it was a very functional machine. And I'm very much into function rather than being absolutely beautiful, but this was very much worth salvaging and saving and getting fixed, getting repaired. And when my wife later on, that a couple of years later, she died from cancer.
I'm sorry.
But I have had this, and it's been kind of in my mind to get it done. And finally, I found Scott, and we went and get it done.
Sure. What was your wife's name that passed away?
Well, that was Margie Boyle.
Margie.
She was a little youper.
She was a youper, huh?
Yeah, she was very familiar with the treadle machines.
That's awesome. Are you going to name this machine anything special?
Well, in essence, what I have in my mind is that my daughter loved Margie, and it's for me and it's for my daughter, because she would use it. Margie, I'm sure, would be happy to sit on her shoulder and tell her how to use it.
Yeah, do this, do that.
Yeah. And it is. It's just a neat machine.
Yeah, it is. It's been a pleasure to work on it. I mean, there was a lot of work to be done, obviously, a lot of rust and the mechanics and making adjustments on it. And it obviously received all brand new paint, auto grade paint. It got brand new decals on it as well. And as you'll see in the shots that we're going to go to on Facebook right now, all those decals have to be hand cut. So it's a real tedious process, but when you get done with it and you sit back and you take a deep breath and you go, wow, is that the same machine? So Why don't we do this? I'm going to just go right to your right shoulder here and kind of zoom in on the screen. These are some recent shots that I added. This is my screensaver. It's all cow country stuff. That's a cute one. All right, let me turn my screen around and we'll get some of these pictures up so you and other folks can see kind of the process that we took things through. I think this is our beginning one right here. So this is Mike's 1906 Model 27 at the very beginning. And I'm going to kind of zoom in on it a little bit closer. As you can see, there's some pretty rough spots on it. Paint is real chalky. The decals are in real bad disrepair. They just have had a lot of wear on them. And also we've got quite a bit of rust on the machine as well. So I'm just going to click through these and we'll kind of look and see where we started and then the process that I took it through. So here we're looking at the faceplate area, and you can see the faceplate has a lot of rust kind of pitted into the metal on the needle bar here. We've got rust. Presser foot bar, we've got rust. It's just it's all over the machine. Here's a better shot of the faceplate. I've got to widen my shot just a little bit. You can see again, it's just real dingy looking. Has almost kind of a burnt look to it, but that's just rust and varnishing and other stuff that builds up on the machine over the years. It's nothing unusual. Here we're kind of looking at the front of the machine. You can just see, again, the decals are kind of worn down. Our upper tension here is just covered in rust. It's in real rough state. This is one of our little access panels right here. Again, you can see that that's covered in rust as well. Here we're looking at the bed area, kind of near the front of the machine, near the needle, and again, you can just see the paint and everything is looking like it's definitely needing some attention. There's the center of the machine right there on the bed, and you can just see the decal has been worn down. There's signs of varnishing and just, the age and the wearing of the machine. I mean, we're talking about a machine that today, September the 18th, is 114 years old. So this machine has seen a lot of, if it could tell stories, it'd be a very interesting conversation as to where it's been and all that it's seen. So here again, we've got our bobbin winding system. It's very heavy in rust. Our main branding medallion is real dingy looking. We've got rust here. We've just got roughing up of the decals on the front of the machine as well. Here you can really see the rust on that. This is your stitch length controller. So as you crank it all the way in, you're going to get longer stitches. As you crank it out counterclockwise, you're going to get shorter stitches, very, very short, up to about 25 to 30 stitches per inch. And here you just see another shot of kind of the arm of the machine, and again, you can just see the paint and the decaling has seen some wear, quite a bit of wear. Here's the back of the machine, and this decal here, these two decals together are pretty much gone. They're worn down, and again you can see the chalkiness of the paint, combination of dirt and grime and varnishing and just all kinds of things that build up on the machine over the years. And then this is our rear plate that is supposed to be kind of an ornamental piece, and it's really supposed to kind of stand out and just really give the back of the machine pizzazz as well. And right now it's definitely not pizzazzing. It's real dingy, and you can see the combination of rust and varnishing all over it, so it just doesn't look like anything spectacular. Another shot of the back of the machine, you can just kind of see the decals worn down and the quality of the paint is real rough. And here what I'm doing is I'm getting some real specific caliper measurements from the where the thread, the spool of thread would go, to the point where the decal on the top that reads Singer Sewing Machine Corporation has to be fitted. And you can see the decal right there that's going to eventually be placed onto the machine. But I try to be as accurate as I can be to get the measurements as precise. They're never going to be absolutely perfect, but they're going to be about as close as I can get them. So when you're going to redo a machine like this, you first of all have to take it all the way down to bare metal. So before this shot, if you can imagine it, it looked like a silver bullet machine. It was all the way down to the original metal that was cast for the machine. And then you have to add several layers of auto-grade paint, and then you have to rough that paint up in a certain way so that those decals will adhere to that surface. And also at this point, you may not be able to see it in the shot, but I've done all the cleanup on the chrome pieces. The medallion has been cleaned up as well, so we're ready to go to this next phase. Just another shot of the machine. You can kind of just see it in its bare state. Almost, I mean, for this being the birthday to this machine, 114 years old, that's kind of its birthday suit right there, the way it was born, before it got any of its glitz and glamour and any of its decaling and such. And there you can see a real busy workbench, because I've got the decal sets that are going to have to be cut out by hand. I've got my X-Acto knife set up here. I've got the different wells of solutions that you have to use to apply these decals. And we're ready to really go into the phase of changing the look of this machine from dingy to extraordinary. So here I go, trying to very carefully cut around these decals, and these decals are almost, I would almost describe them as kind of a plastic vinyl material, but they're as thin as rice paper. And so as you're cutting around them, you have to be incredibly careful that you don't slip with a knife. You have to be incredibly careful that you don't press in too much, because it's like a foil material that these are made out of, and you can damage them or tear them very easily. There's a real close-up shot of what I'm having to kind of cut around. You know, especially when you're going around pieces like this and the head of this bird and stuff, it's real tedious work. And that's going to be the one that goes on the rear of the machine, and that's a little bit of a tricky one, because where that plate used to be, remember that dingy plate here? It actually has to mold over part of the lip of that and then go across the back of the machine. So it's real tricky, and as soon as these hit the machine, because of the suction effect and because it has a light glue on the back of it, if you don't have it positioned right, you're really up a creek without a paddle. You have to adjust it very carefully, and at that point you're dealing with something that's as thin as rice paper, and if you're trying to reposition it on the surface of the machine, it can very easily tear. There's another one of them, and there's a couple of these. There's one of these that goes on the rear of the machine and one that goes on the front of the machine. Probably one of the most beautiful decal patterns that Singer ever came out with. Just fabulous. And there's the front one that's going to go on the front of the machine. You can see the Sphinx and just the Egyptian type style of it that's going to eventually be attached to the machine. And I think that's all of set one. Now we're going to go on to set two. The fun continues. And at this point you can see Dr. Singer and Mr. Bean kind of supervising me, making sure I'm doing a good job. And you can see at this point we really have excuse me, started to transform the look of the machine from its original real rough state to a point where you're starting to see that ornamental side of it. And I'm kind of like with Mike, excuse me, I like things that are functional, and I love the mechanics of things. But when you can take a museum piece like this and have that function and have that mechanics, but also have just the absolute beauty restored to it, that's a real cool thing to be able to do. And then it becomes an heirloom piece that for generations, hopefully the family will hang on to and enjoy. And it'll be a reminder of all those special people that had touched it. And there's Mr. Bean. He almost looks kind of ticked off, doesn't he? He almost has that kind of disgusted look like, well, I could do that. I could do that. It's not just Dr. Singer and Scott. I could do that kind of stuff. So you remember that centerpiece that was all worn down and you could barely even see it. This is our new replacement piece now on the bed of the machine. And once we go through all the other phases, it's going to be real pretty. Here's the back of the machine. We put on that decal that you saw me cutting out. We've added some of the other decal pieces. Dr. Singer is keeping a real close eye on me as I'm using in my right hand. If you can't see that in the shot, it's a very small paintbrush. And when you're putting these decals into position, you use the paintbrush to slightly nudge them if they're a little bit off center. And you also use it as best as you can to gently brush over the decal to get all of the bubbles and all of the air out from underneath them, so that eventually when you seal them, you don't have imperfections that are real evident, because as they dry, you won't be able to see them, but once you clear coat it and finish off the machine, they can be real evident. So I'm kind of brushing that down and making sure it's real nice and flat. There's Dr. Singer, that old ham getting in the middle of the shot as usual. Kind of looking at my work again at that center piece that we replaced, and then the upper piece and some of the other ones as well. Here I'm doing some of those decal placements on the rear of the machine. On the rear of the machine, just below that ornamental plate, we've got the small one that I kind of described like a little bug. It must be an Egyptian symbol. I didn't look it up. And then we've got that one larger one you saw me cutting out just below it. And again, I'm using that paintbrush to very gently stroke down the decal. And you have to kind of be careful which way you're stroking it, otherwise it might be perfectly aligned. And I had this happen a couple of times on Mike's machine. I'll have it perfectly aligned and I'll start to work those bubbles and the solution out from underneath it, because you put kind of a slick coat underneath it when you put it so that you can maneuver it a little bit, and knocked it out of alignment again. So then I had to start over again and get it back into alignment all over again. And there's Dr. Singer again, kind of keeping an eye on how I'm doing with the decal placement. And there you can kind of see a close-up of that decal replacement that's on the end of the bed. Just the detail, the colors. It has to be as close to the original as possible, and that's what I always aim for. Here you're seeing kind of a shot top down. You can see I use a variety of different paint brushes in getting the decals positioned and getting them nice and flat. And this decal on top is probably one of the toughest ones, because you have to very carefully cut that center piece out so that the oil hole is open so Mike can oil the machine, and also so that that spool pin can come up between that decal. Then you have to place that decal down, and before that light glue starts to set on it, get it all evenly out and getting it point true on the machine. That one is, I had nightmares about that decal. There you can see a closer shot of the decal and kind of looking down the machine towards the Singer manufacturing company. There you're kind of seeing a rear shot of the machine, and you can see pretty much all of the decals in place, so it gives you a real good idea of how that machine is going to look once it's finished, and once all of the final steps are completed to give it a nice sealed finish. You can't just leave the decals like this. It kind of looks like you could, but the decals have to be sealed and preserved, so you have to very carefully go over that with about 4 or 5 coats of auto grade clear coat to seal off the decals so that they're not going to be compromised in any way. There we're just looking at the end of the bed again. There's our center one. I think that's just spectacular. I don't know about you folks watching, but the detail of it and just the overall impression when you look at it, if you're sitting down at this machine and you're sewing, it's got to be a constant distraction because it's a spectacular design that they came up with. And here we're looking at kind of the rear of the machine towards the needle, and you're looking at that pattern of decals that we've just laid down, and it's coming together real nicely. Here we're looking at the front of the machine, and you can see that we do not have the big decal in place yet. And next to the one on top that I talked about, I had nightmares about because it's so difficult to get that thing positioned correctly when you're basically coming over something that's as thin as rice paper. You're trying to keep it from tucking under itself, because what these decals will have a tendency to do once they're separated from the paper is they'll have a tendency to kind of buckle underneath each other, and the front will stick to the back, and then all of a sudden you've got a mess. And next to this top one, the front one is equally hard because this part right here on the machine, with the way they molded it and casted it, it's curved. And whenever you're trying to lay down a decal on a curved surface and get it straight and get it even and getting it flat and getting it laying flat and true before that glue sets and before you can't move it anymore, it is a race to the finish, to say the least. Just another shot showing the same thing. And that's the last of that set. We just have one more set that I want to show you. So at this point in the game, we have all of the decals in place, including the decal on the front of the machine as well for the Singer symbol. There you can kind of see the machine. Is that, if you can reflect back in your memory of the opening shots of how Mike's 1906 Model 27 looked before, does that look a little bit different? Just a smidgen difference. Trying to get my thing to advance, but it may not advance for me here. Hold on one second, folks. This was the last in the set, and it's saying I wanted to be first to show them what I look like now, and so I've got to reboot this real quick. Oh, I see why. My internet went out temporarily. It should come back on in just a little bit. The internet service has not been real reliable around here recently. It kind of comes and goes all the time. And if we can't get it, we can't get it. And that's fine. But hopefully we can get this to come back online. Well, while that's loading, let me take us over to the other workbench. And I want to show you a little bit of some things about the Vibrating Shuttle. Because most people don't think, and I'm going to move Dr. Singer and Mr. Bean out of the way. Most people don't think of the Vibrating Shuttle as something that really needs any attention or any maintenance per se. Well, like any part of the machine, and again, the Vibrating Shuttle being a critical part of generating the stitching, and that's Hank. You all know Hank by now. He's upset about something. The Vibrating Shuttle being an integral part of creating the stitching, it has to receive maintenance like any other thing. And I see I have to come in quite a bit more. That should work, I think, pretty well. So if you've never seen one of these before, it's called a Vibrating Shuttle. Again, it was one of the beginnings of what generated the lock stitches. One of the first phases of that after we moved past the chain stitching type machines. And this particular one is not for Mike's machine. I just have it here for demonstration purposes. but it has different components to it. So I'm going to try to move this down a little bit so we can work on the workbench. Got to see where that is. It's always a challenge when you're kind of over your shoulder. So there I am finally in the shot. So as we're looking at this vibrating shuttle, unlike the last one you saw, where I was going over Mary Klein's 1885 Singer 12K. You remember that one? We just did that? And I talked about how that vibrating type shuttle was very different because instead of having a band on top, which is what this is, this band right here, by turning this screw either in or out, you can increase or decrease the pull of what this shuttle is doing as far as creating that top stitch. Remember again, the shuttle or the bobbin case on the bottom of the machine is going to affect how that stitch presents on top of the material. The upper tension control on top is going to control how that lock stitch looks on the bottom of the material. So it's kind of a tug of war. I've talked about that before, where it's kind of a tug of war. But as that machine is operating and it's pulling thread through this shuttle very rapidly, underneath this band you have thread passing very, very fast, and it leaves behind a lot of debris. So periodically what you need to do is get a real small screwdriver like this, and you need to remove that screw. Just lefty-loosey, just keep unscrewing it until it comes loose. And just make sure you've got a surface underneath it where that screw is not going to skip away. Because this is a screw that would be, maybe you could find it at a hardware store, but I doubt it. Maybe in the gun parts or something. So we got that tiny little screw out. You can kind of see that in the shot, I think. Trying to get my... Now you can see it in the shot. And then what we're going to do is we're going to carefully remove this little band. This little band on top. And it kind of tucks in there, so you have to kind of wiggle it out of place. And then what you see is this is your pressure band right here that's going to be pushing down. The more you turn that screw down, it's going to be pushing down on that thread and creating more and more tension on that thread to define the top stitch. But if you can look on the bottom of that, you'll see on the bottom of this shuttle, and Mike's was no different when I took his apart, there's a lot of varnishing on there, a lot of gook, a lot of junk that can really create drag for that thread as it's passing through there very rapidly. So what we have to do is we have to use a magical solution called rubbing alcohol. And I'm just putting a little couple drops on both sides of this Q-tip swab, and then we just gently rub over that band part that thread is going to be coming into contact with. Now I don't know if you can see in the shot or not. I'll lower it down a little bit. But that is one nasty looking Q-tip now. And that's just from that band piece right there. Now we have to also clean the top of the shuttle that band is going to be pressing against when that thread is racing through very rapidly as you're sewing. We have to clean that off also, because all of those contact points have to be real clean and clear so that there's nothing hindering that thread. Otherwise, what's going to happen to Mike or your granddaughter, right?
My daughter.
Your daughter. Either to Mike or his daughter, as they're sitting down to this machine, is they're going to have the thread breaking. As that thread is trying to get pulled through here, it's going to be running into all this junk. Look at that. Keys, oh, too high. That's all what we just took off right there. Now after we strip it off, and I've talked about this in other premieres, we have to put just a real light coat of machine oil, just real light, both on the inside of the band and also on the top of the shuttle. also on the inside of the shuttle as well, because remember, you're going to have a long bobbin in there that's spinning around and distributing that thread, and that also has to be clean and clear. I'm not using rubbing alcohol on that because I do add a little bit of kerosene to my lubricant, and kerosene is a wonderful cleaner and a preserver and also a rust inhibitor as well. Well, you can see we just swabbed that a little bit, and that wasn't super clean either. Now beyond that, the last thing that I would recommend you do, because ultimately when you pull that bobbin thread up for this shuttle, you see that tiny little hole right here? That's where that thread's going to come up through, and inevitably as that thread is getting pulled up through that hole over and over again, you get thread remnants and other things like that. These you can buy at Walmart, and they're like a dental flossing type tool. Although this one's really dirty, I wouldn't use it on your teeth. I wouldn't recommend it. But you can slide it into that little hole very beautifully and just make sure that there's nothing stuck in that hole. When I cleaned out Mike's, his had chunks of thread and just all kinds of yucky stuff in there. You can do the same thing to this hole as well. And also even the front one where we're going to put that screw again. And then I do something very technical like blowing through it. I usually would use the air compressor, but just to make sure it's nice and clear. And then we're going to put that band back into place again. And you can see it's got a little foot almost, kind of slides in the end of there. You're then going to rotate it back down, get it into position. And then we have to put that tiny little screw back into place again. And then screw it down. And again, just be mindful when if you do this cleaning procedure, you don't want to go like you normally would and tighten it all the way down, because then it's going to be pulling on that thread too hard, and you'll be real frustrated because you'll be trying to crank that upper tension up to counteract what you've done. Where am I? To counteract what you've done on this shuttle. So when you turn it back down, turn it down just enough that it's going to be fairly snug, but it's not going to be too snug, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to screw it down to that point. Now, when this eventually goes in the machine that it's for, which is a 127, and interestingly, the 127 actually followed Mike's machine. The 27 came out after the VS1, the VS2, the VS3, and then after the 27 came the Model 127, which is what this shuttle is for. So when I put this into that 127, if I discover all of a sudden that my top stitch on the material when I sew it looks really undefined, it looks really junky, then I'll have to take this shuttle back out again and give it a couple more turns down. Because again, when you increase the tension on this shuttle, what it's going to do is it's going to define that top stitch more. The opposite, if I put it in and all of a sudden I've got my upper tension turned as high as it'll go, and I'm still getting a lock stitch that doesn't look good, then I'm going to have to come back in here and I'm going to have to loosen that screw, turn it to the left counterclockwise, because what's happening is that shuttle is pulling too hard down, and the upper tension is not strong enough to countermand the pull of what this shuttle is doing. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's just a little bit of maintenance on the vibrating shuttle. And I got a yes and an amen from Mike, so I must have done okay in explaining it. So I'm going to move this to the side as well. And now we're going to do the grand unveiling of this machine. Now, when I asked Mr. Bean and I asked Dr. Singer, because they set all this up. They got all this set up. I was running around doing different things, and they got it all set up. And I said, we're going to have a VIP in the workshop today. We're going to have the customer coming in, and you guys need to make sure everything is set up properly. And they let out a little bit of a giggle, like they were into some sort of mischief. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. When Mr. Bean and Dr. Singer get together, they can do all kinds of mischievous things. And so I hope they haven't been naughty, but sometimes they just are. So I'm going to slide out of the way. I'm going to try to get the camera shot right, and then I'm going to invite Mike to slide that partition out of the way. And I'm going to take the partition, and then we'll kind of go forward from there.
Take it forward.
Yeah, you can just kind of grab it right in the middle on top and then just drag it back if you're able.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I know why they were giggling now. Those nasty little guys. They put an old Model 27 from my collection on the workbench. That's not Mike's machine. You guys. I'm glad you guys have fun in the workshop, but not at Mike's expense, for goodness sakes. Let's get that out of the way. That's not the right machine. This is the right machine. Well, believe it or not, what you're looking at is the same machine that you saw in those Facebook shots. 1906 Model 27 that is 114 years old today. And you can see all of those parts that were rusted are cleaned up. You can see the decals in place now. You can see the clear coat in place. And now it looks pretty. But does it actually sew? That's kind of what we're wondering. So I'm going to zoom down towards the needle. And I had talked to Mike about this. I actually left some of the old patina on the machine, like these slide plates that go over the shuttle. I actually cleaned them up and then I sealed them, but I left some of the original patina on them to give them that old age authentic look, so that people, when they come to Mike's house and he goes, "This machine's 114 years old," they're like, "Yeah, right." But you can see in the shot, it looks a little bit different than before. So let's crank off a little bit of stitching on this and see how this machine does in actually sewing. And again, this machine is set up to be in a treadle table. It's not set up to be on a workbench like this, just balanced. So hopefully everything turns out okay. All right, let me give this a turn and you can listen to this machine operate. I'm going to be doing it. It's powered by Scott's finger. Here we go. And what we're sewing is 2 layers of cotton blend. You've seen me sew this before on the channel. I don't know about what you can hear, but it runs super smooth and super quiet. You could be in the same room with somebody watching TV and I don't think they'd get upset at you because it doesn't make much noise. As a matter of fact, you may remember that one customer I had that she liked to be in the room with her husband at night, but the electric sewing machine she had was too loud. It was distracting. And so she bought a hand crank from me, so that she could sew in the room when her husband was in there watching TV and they could enjoy each other's company without her machine driving him cuckoo. It's not bad speed for a finger, huh, folks?
Not bad at all.
And for those of you that always write me the nasty notes about why didn't you close the box, Scott, I'll close the box today. All right, and because I didn't explain, but when you set the needle on this, this machine will take standard needles. You don't have to buy a specialized needle like the one that I had to buy for Mary Klein's 1885 Singer 12K. You can buy needles for this that are at Walmart, at Joann Fabrics. It just takes a 15-1 style needle, which is a fancy way of saying pretty much any Schmetz needle that they sell at Walmart or at Joann Fabrics will work in this machine. The only thing you have to be aware of is you have to put the flat side of the needle, when you slide it up into the needle shaft, you have to put the flat side of the needle to the right towards the pillar. And then you're going to thread this machine. Let me actually pull this out. You're going to thread this machine from left to right. There we go. All right, let me show you these stitches. So the first thing we're looking at is the top stitch that we laid down. Just trying to see if you can see it there. And the spacing is really spot on. The spacing is solid. The stitch integrity, the stitch presentation looks really good. And I've done quite a bit of sewing on this needle already, so I'm really very satisfied with how that stitching is looking. And again, we didn't sew through anything super difficult. This is just 2 layers of cotton blend, but nonetheless, the stitch quality and the presentation is spot on. As we turn it over, we have our lock stitch, and that also looks really good. The spacing, the formation, the presentation of the stitch looks very good. I might tweak it a little bit. Remember, again, to define our lock stitch more, we have to increase our upper tension or decrease our shuttle pull. I would probably turn this just a hair to the right to emphasize that lock stitch even more. But that is a real good looking, a very good looking lock stitch that Mike's machine just laid down. So I'll give that a pass for this material, and I'm going to hand it over to Mike so he can look at it a little bit closer. And what we're going to sew now is we're going to sew some genuine cowhide leather. A lot of people don't think, number one, that the old, the old shuttle style machines, the treadles, are capable of sewing leather. I've gotten some people that have really tried to take me to task about this. So at every opportunity, I love to sew leather with machines that they tell me can't do it, so I can show it on camera that they can. So this again is genuine cowhide. You can look at the back of that, and you can see right away that nap is just saying, yeah, good luck, model 27, 114 years old. Try getting through me. Even though I'm just 1 layer, I'm about 4 ounces of leather, and you're going to be turning this with your finger, for goodness sakes. So we're going to show it who's boss here and get this done too. And you can imagine if you're powering this with a treadle belt. I've got a treadle belt ordered for Mike right now so he can get it set up at home soon enough, along with some additional long bobbins. And if you're powering this with the way the treadle is designed to be set up with your foot, you can go through leather that will just, it would just send other machines running away screaming and crying and going, oh my gosh, no way. But for this model 27, it gets the job done even if you're cranking it by your finger. So there we've got a single layer of leather, and I love the way I picked this thread up at Joann Fabrics. It's the American quilting thread, and it does a really good job, particularly on these vibrating shuttles. And you can see there is our top stitch. I'll tell you one thing, folks, if you go to a textbook that says this is how a stitch is supposed to look, Mike's piece of leather is going to be in there, because that's exactly what we want to be seeing as far as the stitch presentation, the stitch definition, just the overall appearance of that stitch. I'm going to kind of hold it up to the camera as well so you can see it even better. The spacing on that, the formation, the definition, as my friends down in the south say, it just don't get any better than that. If we turn it over, we're going to be a little bit hard pressed to see that through that nap, but if I pull it back, you'll just see remnants of that lock stitch kind of popping through. There they are. You got to kind of pull it back because that nap kind of masks it a little bit. And those lock stitches are just as perfect as that top stitch is. So I'm going to give this a definite pass as well. This single layer of genuine cowhide. This Model 27 just got the job done so easily. If you hadn't seen it live on this premiere, you'd be like, no way did you just crank off 4 ounces of leather with your finger with a vibrating shuttle and a Model 27 that's 114 years old? Yeah, we just did. Absolutely. So I'm going to hand this to Mike as well. And with that, I think we are probably going to move towards wrapping this premiere up. I'm just going to real quick come off the tripod so I can give you a little bit closer look at Mike's machine. And in honor of this machine that is celebrating its birthday today, I'm also going to put on the happy birthday song just one more time so that we can acknowledge the birth date of this beautiful Model 27 that has been a resident here at the workshop for 7 months and now is finally just steps away from heading back home. All right, so here comes our old-timey. I didn't even tell you this one is called Happy Birthday Old Timey. So let's see what you think of this one. This is the one we played before. Put your sunglasses on, we're coming across the bed. And I didn't mention, if you want to look this up yourself just for practice, the serial number on Mike's Model 27 is H as in Hotel 638129. H as in Hotel 638129. And if you look that up, you'll see that happy birthday is definitely in order today. Well, what do you think, Mike?
I think it's pretty cut and thick and wonderful.
Well, you heard it yourself, folks. He said it's cotton pick and wonderful. I don't think that's probably one of the greatest compliments that I've ever gotten. You like her then, huh?
Oh, yes, sir.
You know, the last thing I was going to show you, and I'm going to end our birthday song a little bit because I got such a kick out of this. I got to show you guys something about. I've had friends. Day to you. All right, I'm going to stop that real quick. As I was getting to the final phases of prepping Mike's 114-year-old Model 27, I had a little bit of a dilemma. Because as I zoom in on the right side of his machine, you're going to look at that really cool. I could have taken a traditional black bobbin tire and put it on there, but I thought I want to give this something a little bit different. So I tracked down a white bobbin tire and I put it on Mike's machine. But then I looked at it and I looked at it again and I thought, wait a second, I have a problem. How am I going to wind a long bobbin? Because I'm not going to use the thread that's on the long bobbin that Mike gave me, because you never know how old the thread is. You don't know if it's good thread or bad thread or if it's partly dry rotted or what. I thought, how in heaven's name am I going to wind a bobbin? Because I don't have it set up in a treadle table, and that bobbin tire goes up against the treadle belt and it winds that way. If y'all aren't familiar with this just rotates in when you're going to wind it. It kind of presses against that leather lead that goes around the machine, and then when you're done winding it, you just rotate this back away again so that it's not creating drag on the belt. I thought, boy, I got a pickle here. I've got a pickle. What am I going to do? Because I didn't have a treadle machine set up, and I didn't have any way of winding a fresh long bobbin, and I needed to do it. So what do you do when you're facing a challenge like that? You come up with a good old redneck solution to solving a problem. So I looked at my Black & Decker drill and I thought, I wonder if that long bobbin will fit into the end of that drill, and if I can just tighten it enough that I can wind a bobbin, and then I'll go ahead and rotate the bobbin around, reverse the direction of the drill, and wind the other side and just keep on going. So that's what I ended up doing on Mike's machine, like this. And then when you get to a certain point, I just loosen the drill up. I turn that long bobbin around. I stuck it back into the drill. And I carefully tighten it back down. Got to check the orientation of it. And you got to remember to reverse the drill then. Reverse the drill so you can wind the other side. And you just keep on going. And you have to do that several times to get it even on both sides of the long bobbin, but at least we have a start. So if any of you have ever faced that dilemma where you're looking to wind a long bobbin and you don't have the machine set up in a treadle table, get yourself a handy dandy Black & Decker screwdriver type drill, and you can wind a long bobbin that way. So don't share that secret with everybody because it may catch on, you never know. Well, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this premiere where we could honor Mike Boyle's incredible 1906 Singer Model 27 that went from a real rough state to a point now where, I'll tell you one thing, I wouldn't be surprised to walk into a museum and see it sitting there center stage for everybody to go, so that's what a sewing machine looks like. So Mike, thank you also for being a special guest today in the workshop. And I hope you really enjoy her.
I really did enjoy it. It was very, very pleasurable. It's a wonderful machine. And thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, y'all stay tuned for other great premieres like this where we're going to take other machines and through a lot of persistence and time and talent and all the other good stuff and a little dose of magic, we'll take a machine that looks like it should be on the curb to a machine that looks like it should be in your local museum. So God bless, and I'm going to wind the shot so Mike can end the class officially. Thank you, Mike. All right, take care, and again, happy birthday to this incredible Singer Model 27. God bless everybody.